Solution: y equals to 1 minus x is the power 1 minus x. Step 1. Take the log, natural log, that's length of both sides, and that implies we take the length of y equals to length of the other side 1 minus x raised to the power 1 minus x. That's from that particular equation. Yeah. So that's how we took it. Then the y side we did also. Okay. So we have length y equals to 1 minus s length 1 minus s. This is the law of logarithm. The power goes to the back of the length. So we go to step 2 rather. We find the derivative or the differential of both sides. That implies one over y prime, and this is because we're differentiating y. If you differentiate length y, it's 1 over y. So this is how it is given. Differentiation of length x is equals to that's the differentiation of the length, the s inside the length over the s itself. So if you do this other one, it will be y because this one around have y. But to have y prime because it is y. So going over to the other side, that's that side of 1 minus x. And so 1 minus s, then 1 minus x. We'll have, using product rule, let u equals to 1 minus x and v equals to ln 1 minus x. Product rule states that if you have two functions u and v, the derivative is equals to, so that's v du dx plus u dv dx. The u ds is from our u, this u. If you differentiate 1, you have 0. Differentiating x is 1, that's minus 1. Now the vds is equals to zero. That's from this ln of 1. We'll differentiate what is inside the function. 1 minus s. If you differentiate 1, you have 0. Differentiate minus s, you have minus 1. So over this function is 1 minus s. So that's the differential. Derivative of uv with respect to x from what we have just done now, as combining them, is equals to u is, that's v is 1 minus s times du dx, which is minus 1. Du dx is actually minus 1. then plus u 1 minus s, that's u, times dv dx, that's that, minus 1 over 1 minus x, and these two can cancel themselves, 1 minus s and 1 minus s, and I'm left with then 1 minus s, then the minus will go to the back because that's minus 1. Multiply it will be minus, and that's it. So minus 1. So this means we have minus open bracket, then 1 minus x, then okay, this is bracket. So we now have plus 1, close the bracket. Remember that what we had on that side was 1 over y prime. So I want to make y prime, set the formula. Y prime is equals to minus y, then 1 minus x, then plus 1. So we can go further and replace our y with what was given us in the question, and that's 1 minus s times raised to the power 1 minus x times 1, then 1 minus s, then plus 1. So that's the final answer.